When authorities found the body of Thaddeus Greer, the university's chief archivist, he was sitting perfectly upright in his chair. No signs of struggle, no signs of injury. Just one thing stood out. His eyes were missing, not removed, just gone. As if they'd vanished from his skull without a drop of blood left behind. The door was locked from the inside. No one had entered, no one had left. But on his desk, open and facing the window, was his final journal entry. 5 words scribbled in uneven handwriting. I didn't open it. It opened me. Authorities closed the case in silence. No suspects, no press release, not even a cause of death listed on the certificate. Just an unspoken agreement to seal off the private archive beneath the old library and forget it ever existed. But stories like this don't stay buried forever. Some say Thaddeus found something he shouldn't have. A manuscript older than the building itself. A book no one was ever supposed to read. And now, it's whispering again. Beneath the oldest wing of St. Illyrian's University, buried under layers of brick and silence, sits a room few people know about. No signage, no public records, just a reinforced iron door hidden behind a false bookshelf in the restricted wing of the library. They call it the Archive. It was built in 1611, originally intended to house rare religious texts banned during the Reformation, apocryphal gospels, early heretical writings, forbidden translations. But over time, its purpose changed. Not officially, of course, not on paper. But quietly, behind closed doors, the archive became something else entirely. It turned into a dumping ground for knowledge people wanted to forget. Manuscripts recovered from condemned cults, journals from explorers who went too far, books found sealed in tombs and churches with no known origin, each one locked away, uncatalogued, and unread, except by one man at a time, the archivist. There has always been one, and only one, archivist appointed to oversee the collection. No assistants, no visitors, no oversight. Once chosen, the archivist was expected to live in near total isolation. Weeks, sometimes months, without contact. Just them, the room, and the knowledge no one else wanted. It was considered an honor, a position of trust, and, unofficially, a warning. Archivists weren't allowed to discuss the contents of the archive, not with students, not with scholars, not even with each other. Each generation was given a single instruction by their predecessor. Keep it locked. Don't read out loud. And if it speaks to you, don't answer. Of course, most assumed that was just dramatic tradition, a bit of mystique to guard a dusty job in a dark room. But those who took the role quickly learned the archive wasn't just a room. It watched. Among the hundreds of strange and dangerous texts hidden in the archive, there was one that was never catalogued, never given a shelf, never touched by bare hands. It was locked inside a black iron case, welded shut, and sealed with melted wax engraved with a single word, tenebris, Latin for darkness. Over time, archivists began referring to it by a name whispered, never written, the Codex Tenebris, the Book of Darkness. No one knows where it came from. It has no listed author, no date, no language anyone could recognize. According to second-hand accounts, the pages were not made of paper, but something thinner, almost translucent, like skin that had been pressed and dried over centuries. Some archivists claimed the book was bound shut with threads that grew tighter the longer it was ignored. Others said they could hear it breathing if they stood close enough. One even claimed it didn't contain words at all, only shapes, ones that changed each time you looked away. But here's the strangest part. The book was never opened. Not once, not fully, because every time an archivist was left alone with it for too long, something happened. Lights would fail. Ink would smear across pages without being touched. One man went completely blind after sleeping in the same room as it for 3 nights. And then came the voices. Archivists began reporting hearing whispers in languages they didn't speak. Sometimes in dreams, sometimes while awake, some would write down the phrases they heard, only to find the same phrases scribbled in the margins of completely unrelated documents in the archive. Over the years, more than one archivist tried to request the book's destruction. None were approved. The university denied those requests, citing historical value and institutional neutrality. Officially, the Codex Tenebris doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's the reason the archive still breathes, and the reason no archivist ever lasted long, except for one, Thaddeus Greer, the last archivist, the one who stayed longer than anyone else ever dared, and the one who made the mistake the others never did. He didn't open the book. He let it open him. Thaddeus Greer was a man built for solitude. He'd spent most of his life in libraries, lost in dusty pages and forgotten authors. A quiet man with no family, no close friends, and no reputation outside of academic circles. When he was offered the role of archivist at St. Illyrian's, he accepted with a nod and a suitcase. He was 47 years old. At first, his reports were meticulous. Dates, acquisitions, climate control logs. He submitted everything with perfect precision. But over time, the reports changed. They got shorter. Then, stranger. He began submitting documents that weren't requests or logs. They were reflections, observations, half-finished thoughts about shadows that didn't line up with the light source, or pages in books he swore weren't there the day before. He wrote about a knocking sound, always coming from behind the sealed chamber that held the Codex Tenebris, knocking in sets of 3. He wrote about a dream, one that came every night. He's in the archive, alone, as usual, but there's someone else in the room. A figure that stands in the corner, never moving. Its face is obscured by long, flowing paper, and in the dream, Thaddeus never looks at it directly. Because something inside him knows. If he does, he won't wake up. The university dismissed the reports as stress. Archivists before him had broken down too. It was part of the job, they said. But Greer kept writing, kept working, until one day he stopped. 3 days passed. No word, no contact. When security finally forced open the archive, they found him, seated at his desk, eyes missing, skin cold, no signs of trauma. The Codex Tenebris hadn't been opened, but the iron seal on its container was split down the center, as though something had forced its way out from the inside. His journal sat beside him, open to the final page. The same 5 words, over and over again. It opened me. It opened me. It opened me. Later analysis of the handwriting showed something unsettling. Only the first 2 lines matched Thaddeus Greer's script. The rest? Written by a different hand. No one has ever been able to explain that. No one really tries to anymore. Since that night, the archive has remained sealed. No new archivist has been appointed. And yet, the university never declared the position closed. Almost as if they know someone, or something, is still down there, waiting. When university security discovered Thaddeus Greer's body, protocol kicked in fast. The local authorities were called. Forensics arrived. Investigators were briefed. On paper, it was supposed to be a straightforward death in a sealed room. Maybe natural causes. Maybe suicide. That's what they expected. But that isn't what they found. The room was cold. Far colder than the temperature logs showed. The air felt damp, but there was no moisture. The lights, normally bright and sterile, flickered inconsistently. Every few seconds, they'd dim, as if something was stepping in front of them. But nothing ever showed up on camera. In fact, none of the surveillance footage from that day exists. Not because it was lost or deleted, but because the tapes never recorded. Investigators confirmed that the system was active, the storage was functioning, but every second of footage from the 48 hours leading up to Thaddeus's death came back completely blank. Just static. When they examined the Codex Tenebris, The first thing they noticed was the case, split cleanly, as if sliced with something hotter than fire. But the book inside appeared untouched, closed, still bound in its strange, waxy material. The lead investigator, a man with over 20 years of experience, reportedly refused to speak about what he saw inside the archive. All he said was, "I'm not going back down there. I don't care if God himself tells me to. That room is not meant for people." He quit the force 2 weeks later. The official cause of death for Thaddeus Greer? Inconclusive. No wounds, no trauma, no heart attack, no stroke. Toxicology. Clean. No sign of self-harm. Eyes. Missing, but no evidence of removal. Almost like they were never there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.